They discussed the cost.
I believe so, yeah, because he was. I think she initially thought there was like 200 rounds, and I think he eventually informed her it was 50 rounds.
Okay. Exhibit 196 is the video of Mr. Crumbley's son and Mr. Crumbley's wife at the range. You can see when Mr. Crumbley's son is actually in the booth handling the handgun, the 9mm handgun, the Sig Sauer, that there's actually a range safety officer standing slightly behind him to the right. He's got like a bright yellow vest on, correct?
Yes.
And if you know, and I assume that you do know, the purpose of a range safety officer is to ensure that people are handling their firearms correctly.
Yeah, I would say it's in compliance with whatever the rules are for that specific range, yes.
So if that, we would assume, and if you don't want to assume that's okay, but if that range safety officer had seen Mr. Crumbley's son doing something incorrect or inappropriate, it would have been raised as an issue that day.
I would assume so. That's his job, so yes.
The empty box of ammunition that was discovered in the Crumbley home on November 30th of 2021 was Patriot Defense ammunition.
Yes.
And I think you testified earlier that there are 9mm ammunition is more expensive than .22 caliber ammunition, correct?
Generally speaking, yes.
Okay. But within that, there are varying levels of expensive for the 9mm ammunition, correct?
Correct.
And we know that there were two different prices on two different purchases of 9mm ammunition in 2021 by James Crumbley and by his wife Jennifer Crumbley.
Yes.
And obviously, if you're going to the shooting range, you need ammunition to shoot, correct?
Yes.
So it's not unheard of for somebody to buy rounds of ammunition at a shooting range.
No.
During your involvement in this case, you saw no information that James Crumbley was aware of. Clarify, because I think there were a couple. The Instagram post where his son commented, it was Exhibit 100, about his, quote, new SIG.
I don't recall if he saw that one. I know he saw the social media post by his wife of the firearm, but I don't believe that there was evidence of the him viewing that specific post that I found.
You also talked, lastly, you talked about the similarities between the drawing of the handgun on the math that we've seen, the math assignment that we've seen in Exhibit 130, and also, and let me see if I can get back to it, and also the similarity to the handgun, the Sig Sauer handgun. Do you remember making that comparison?
Yes.
Okay. Let me see if I can pull that up.
Any person that's turning on the TV, guys?
Oh, yeah, there's a button on the back.
Bob, there we go. That's fine.
Can you see? Okay.
Yes.
So you talked about the similarities were the striations on the back of the slide,
Yes,
Correct?
that was one of them, yes.
the location of the ejection port,
Yes.
the shape of the trigger guard,
Yes.
and for those reasons you believe that that was the same as the Sig Sauer handgun.
And also the shape of the floor plate of the magazine. When all those are combined, each one taken in isolation, not the case, but if you put them all together, then yes.
And you're obviously work for the ATF.
Yes.
You have some significant familiarity with handguns.
Yes.
This is the Sig Sauer handgun. It's Exhibit 86. This is the Smith & Wesson handgun. A photo that was sent to James Crumbley by his son prior to the purchase of the Sig Sauer handgun.
Correct.
There's striations on the back, correct?
Not on the front.
There's striations on the back.
There are striations on the back, but not the front of that firearm.
And that's the ejection port that we can see on the top. Well, the side facing us. Obviously, you can't see what's on the other side.
Correct. There's also a black line that's not, it's a two-tone firearm, and there's a black line. There's vast differences between that one and the one that's drawn. There are some similarities, like we discussed. But I said again, taken in isolation, it could be a different firearm. But when all put together, it appears to be the same firearm.
And you don't know if anyone who viewed that handgun on the math homework even made the connection between that and the Sig Sauer. Is that fair? Other than you. We know you did.
I found no evidence that they did it. I know that if you buy a firearm, you generally know what it looks like, but no.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Briefly.
Special Agent Brandon, Defense Counsel just asked you some questions about other cable locks being used or could have been used. Do you remember that?
Yes.
All right, and she asked you about the other 2 cable locks. Do we have any evidence there were 2 other cable locks ever given to James Crumbley?
No, there were 2 trigger lock forms that could have been trigger locks or cable locks. And honestly, the cable lock for the Derringer probably wouldn't even work because you have to have one small enough to fit through the actual firearm itself, which the SIG one would not.
All right, and you just testified that you believe a trigger lock was what was sold with the Caltech. Did you say that?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Did you find any evidence of a trigger lock or another cable lock anywhere in the home?
No.
Anywhere in the school?
I didn't search the school, but I'm not aware that one was ever located.
Okay. She just asked you about the comments at the substation. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. What did James Crumbley say when he was asked where that weapon was?
I believe he said it was in the armoire, hidden in the armoire, and then he said the ammunition was underneath a pair of jeans.
Did he ever say locked?
No.
Was there anything that struck you about his mention of the SIG?
Yes. So when he mentions the SIG Sauer, he mispronounced Sauer as Sawyer, which if you purchased that firearm and it was for yourself, you'd be familiar with how to say SIG Sauer.
Okay. And
Your Honor, I would object to that response and ask for it to be stricken. He's making an assumption about what Mr. Crumbley knows.
System.
I'll move on. Special Agent, last question. You mentioned earlier that you reviewed the cell phone data and web searches that were on the phone of James Crumbley.
Yes.
All right. And did you ever find any searches that he did relating to firearm safety or minors?
I did. There were searches related to that topic. It was after the shooting had occurred.
Okay, so December something, after the shooting occurred.
Yes, I don't recall the exact date, but it was after the shooting.
Anything before?
Regarding firearm safety, not that I recall.